Welcome to the Dear Professor series, where college students who take courses online speak their minds. I am your host and e-learning strategist, Dr. Kellie Alston, who is honored to have a conversation with today's guest as she sheds light on her experiences as an online student. I've been teaching online since 2004 and made the tough decision to obtain my PhD through an online program. So I've been both an online instructor and an online student. As a result, I know that some wonderful things are happening with online programs, as well as some not so wonderful things going on. The purpose of this series is to help professors and students experience a more fulfilling online learning environment by allowing students to reveal their needs and pet peeves. I hope that this information will support professors in making the necessary changes or adjustments in the design and delivery of their online courses, which should ultimately enhance student success and satisfaction with distance education. So if you are interested in hearing what students have to say about their lived experiences online, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that the latest episode will come straight to you. If you're listening via a podcast platform, please be sure to follow and rate the series so that your interest and opinion of the show are made known. Today, I am honored to have Ms. Thomasina Tafur as my guest. Hi, Thomasina.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing well. What about you?
Some days I'm hanging in there, but today I'm doing pretty well.
Well, that's good. It's a good day. Welcome to the Dear Professor series.
Thank you. I love what you're doing.
Now, Thomasina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I am currently a PhD student at Pepperdine University. I just finished my third year of classes. So this summer, I am starting the journey of dissertation. And in Pepperdine University, it's in the Education and Psychology department. Now, what's interesting is my career has not been all education and psychology. It's actually been a mix of a number of things. My undergraduate degree is in English literature, and then years later, I got an MBA in international business. So I enjoy both the arts and I enjoy business. I worked at FedEx for 20 years, and that has served me very well in terms of building up good leadership skills. And I've also had the experience of being an expat in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, teaching at a university there, Princess Noor University. My dissertation right now is about trying to understand why there are few women in 5 key Wall Street roles. I am currently a retail trader. I trade equities and options, and I love doing it. So it's hard for me to understand why there are not more women interested in trading as well. Women have made progress in medicine, media, STEM roles over the last few decades. They still have a ways to go, but they've made some improvements. But Wall Street is pretty much flat. In fact, in some roles, it's still single-digit representation. So that's what I'm currently interested in, and that's what I'm currently doing.
Thomasina, you have so much I want to delve into, so I'll try not to take too long.
No worries.
I have so many questions. So let's talk about, number one, you teaching in Saudi Arabia. How did that come to be, and how did you like it?
Something I was going to mention a little bit about me is I am someone who never shies away from a challenge. And so me going into Saudi Arabia was just another one of those challenges. So after I got certified to teach English as a course, I started to apply overseas. And of course, I got some job opportunities given to me in China, South Korea, and a number of places. But when I got one in Saudi Arabia, I decided that's the one to do. Because one of the things I learned when I lived in Philadelphia and I was working at a place called International House, I met a large number of Saudi students. and they told me about their lives there. And one of the things I learned is it's actually pretty challenging for a single woman to enter into the kingdom, or at least it was back then. This was 2012, 2013. And so when I got approved to teach over there, I accepted that job because it was a challenge. So I worked at the university for 2 years, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved my overall experience. I did have some challenges, moving to a country where I don't speak the language. I didn't know anybody. But like any other challenge I've done in the past, I just moved forward. I learned from it. I'm pretty flexible. That's where the FedEx comes in. You have to be pretty flexible to do that job and to move overseas. And so it turned out to be a great experience. And I would do it again if I had the opportunity.
So you mean to tell me you got certified and immediately you decided to teach in another country?
Yeah, why not?
That is so fascinating. My daughter has the same spirit that you do. She wants to go to South Korea and live for a few years. So that is so exciting. I admire people that, are not afraid of challenges and take them on, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about this. Your dissertation is coming up this summer. How are you feeling about that? Do you have any angst, any nervousness? How are you feeling?
I do, because although there's a lot of literature, I'm still in the process of collecting it. And it's kind of disheartening to see that a lot of the studies I pull up at the end of their research, they say more research needs to be done. I'm like, great. So there's some solutions, some ideas, but you also look at the statistics and it's like, women should be doing better. I mean, I do hold out hope. For example, the last 2 presidents for the New York Stock Exchange have been women. So there's some wins along the way, but I'd like to see more of it. And I'm hoping that there's some aspects of my dissertation that will help build on that knowledge and help make this happen.
So why do you think that women are so few and far between in that industry?
Well, I think the obvious reasons are culture. It's a good old boys network, and sometimes those men can be a little crude. And then also, I think that the kind of hours that you need to do these kind of roles don't play very well in trying to be a woman who also wants to be a mother and a good wife and have it all. There's only so many hours in the day, and you have to decide what's more important at that time. And so some women, rightfully so, are not willing to make those kind of sacrifices. And so many times before they're even promoted to some of these highest roles, they kind of back away from it because it's not worth it to them. And I don't blame them at all. But there's got to be a way in which there can be a win, because it's not just a matter of having more women physically represented. I think that's great, but that's not the reason to do it. Some studies have demonstrated that women tend to be more profitable because they don't have a lot of that testosterone running on, which that can make men perform very well, but it can also have them perform very poorly and have great losses. Women being present tends to help even out the market. They also tend to be more conservative when they invest. And there's a lot of positives for women playing a greater role in the financial markets. And that's why I'd like to see more women participate.
Well, I'm excited about your body of research, adding to the body of research, I'd rather say. And I was just watching a webinar where they were talking about, even in companies that are led by women, that the culture that is, the people thrive more. And I'm sure that's, not a generality, but they kind of made me think about that when you said that it gives a balance to that industry. So Thomasina, one of the things doctoral students may hear is that there's a very small percentage of people in the United States with doctorates. And it used to be said that there were only 2%. I heard that 50 million times, 2%, 2%. Have you ever heard that stat before?
Absolutely.
Well, according to the census.gov website, since 2000, the number of doctoral degree holders has more than doubled to 4.5 million. So my question for you, since you're in that category, is what made you say I'm going all the way, other than you just liking those challenges. Now, you said you like challenges, but what made you say, I'm going to earn a PhD?
Or as my mom likes to say, she's crazy. So there's definitely some gene missing in me that doesn't fear challenges, because not even a lot of my friends like to do some of the things I do. Well, firstly, having a PhD has been a long dream of mine. My uncle, Dr. Jim Richardson, was the first in either side of my family to obtain his PhD. He got it at Duke University. And I remember at 19 thinking, oh, I'd love to do that. But I never really was on that kind of a track. In fact, when I left FedEx, I looked at it again and I thought, oh, maybe I should pursue this. And I did look into it very seriously, and then decided, no, it's not for me. When I was flying back from Israel to the United States, so I went to Israel before I left Saudi Arabia, and I was reading in a magazine, I think it was Foreign Policy, there was an advertisement for Pepperdine University's program, and the PhD I'm getting is in global leadership and change. And so as I was reading the program, and then I get back home to the United States, I looked into it and I thought, okay, this is a PhD that I can do. It has all my interests. It's very educationally oriented, yet business oriented and internationally oriented. And it is a part-time PhD in that you take three classes each semester, and it's a hybrid program. So they still allow you to work, but you do have to travel out to LA and then also be able to participate on the Zoom calls. So when I looked at it, the type of degree it was, the schedule that they had, I thought, okay, I can do this. So it was a deep-seated dream I had for many years, but kind of pushed off to the side because it just didn't seem realistic the older I got. But then when this program came along, I'm like, okay, I respect the university. It has a program that works for me personally, and so I'm going to pursue it. So I did, and about 3 years ago, and so far, so good. That's where I am today. So I'm glad I made the decision to pursue it.
I am too, because you sound very passionate about it. Global leadership and change. Is that what you said? Yeah. So when you're thinking about that, how important is it to be passionate about your doctoral degree?
Well, that is one of the things I'm grateful that our professors said from the get-go. Even though you're just now starting, be thinking about your topic. You don't have to be decided, but be thinking about it and make sure it's something you're passionate about. So when I started my first semester, I had 5 topics I was interested in. And one of those topics was supply chain management, since I had 20 years at FedEx. And I thought, well, this way I'm able to fold in some of the things I already know, and it might help. And after that first semester, doing a couple of papers on supply chain management, I just said, you know what? I put in 20 years. That was enough. I want to do something new. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, wait a minute. What are the things that you love to do? One of which is you enjoy trading equities and options. So try and find a subject around Wall Street, around the financial markets, or something to that degree. And the more I started looking into either the participation or lack thereof of women in any of these particular roles, I became more and more intrigued. So I took what I was passionate about, tried to use it for whatever papers were required of me. So I didn't just write about, women within these markets, but whatever the paper was requesting at that time, I tried to tie it in to one of those 5 roles and the markets. So after 3 years, you're building up all this information. So now it makes sense to explore it in the manner that I am. So I'm glad that our professors made it very clear early on, make sure it's something you're passionate about, because you're going to be doing it for another year or up to 2 years. And you want to make sure you have that passion, because otherwise you'll just dread the days you have to research and write about it.
Well, Thomasina, you gave some very good tips, and that's be passionate. And I also like the fact that you decided to do something new, because I think you can get become overwhelmed and bored easily. because you have to write so much in your courses. And I was just talking to a former student of mine who is now 69 years old, and she's about to pursue her doctorate. She just got her master's last week. And we were talking about that, and I said, this is not a master's degree. You can't just pick something and kind of, you have got to be passionate about this. So I'm glad your professors made that clear. I also want to shout out Duke University. I'm from Durham, North Carolina. Okay. So the fact that your uncle got his doctor from Duke, yay.
Both sides of my family are from North Carolina. My sister and I are the only two cousins born outside of the state. We were born and raised in California.
So. Oh, my goodness. Too funny. Yeah, so we have people in my family that have gone to Duke and lots of people that have gone to their enemy, Carolina. So
I cheer for any team that makes it to the Sweet 16. So I don't have any skin in it, just a North Carolina team. That's all that matters.
So then you were rooting for North Carolina State this year, weren't you?
Of course.
Yes, I was so happy for them. Shout out to the Wolfpack. So Thomasina, what's your general experience with taking courses online?
That's a great question. And before this interview, I reviewed because I was first thinking it was only Zoom. And I'm like, no, actually, I've had more experience. Now, the interesting thing is I'm part of Generation X. So I'm not a baby boomer who's clueless when it comes to technology. And I'm not Gen Z or a millennial who that's been a whole part of my life. I've evolved along with technology. So probably my first introduction to any kind of online learning was probably the educational videos that I used to watch with TD Ameritrade, which is no longer in existence. Charles Schwab bought them out about 2 years ago. And in fact, just this past week, they transferred everything online. Now everything is Charles Schwab. So the online videos through TD Ameritrade. And then when I wanted to take my trading to the next level, because at that time, all I was doing was trading stocks and going long. I wasn't doing anything else. Well, you can only do so much with that. I then took some formal training on how to learn how to trade equities better, how to trade options, and how to trade futures. And that was with an organization called Trading Academy. And there, we not only had face-to-face, and we traded online at the same time as the market was open. When you took those courses, they also had a video series that they wanted you to watch before and then after. And then they have something called XLTs, which means Extended Learning Track. So, for example, this morning, I went on to listen to one of my favorite traders as he reviewed the markets for the week and what he anticipates for the upcoming week. And so he shows the charts live, and it is through Zoom, but it's kind of a special Zoom, where we can't really participate. We can ask questions in the chat, but, he reviews all these things that we may be interested in. And then he gives us a few minutes, I should say, to take screenshots if we wanted to, so we could prepare our trades for the following week. But then I really got into online education with this whole PhD because it is a hybrid, as I mentioned before. So I started in 2021 towards the tail end of COVID. So in fact, there was one semester, I think it was the second semester, where there was a greater outbreak in LA. And so we didn't even fly out to LA. Everything was online. So we had to do a lot of that. But also when we're there in LA face-to-face, we're still using a lot of technologies. So we've used iFlip and Menti. We've had to learn how to do pechakuchas. Those are just the things off the top of my head that I could remember. So the Pepperdine course, it does a very good job of having a lot of online education because they want to make sure that we are up to par when it comes to our technology. I also love languages, so I use Duolingo a lot. In fact, my streak is 1,050 days, I think, where I haven't broken not using the app. And then let's see. I know when I graduate, one of the things that I would love to do is help women learn how to trade. So I'm in the process of starting up my own website and starting up this company, which right now I'm calling Women of Wall Street, because that is my ultimate goal. I would love to be able to teach other women how to change their financial legacy, like my mother did for our family. And that's been my experience online so far.
Well, Thomasina, I'm Gen X as well. So I have a lot in common with you as you were sharing that. And you guess what you made me think about? When I was in my 30s, I don't know if you remember this infomercial called Teach Me to Trade. Do you remember that?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it used to come on constantly, like in the wee hours of the night, Teach Me to Trade. And so you would register for the, they would have these seminars in different cities. So I went to High Point, North Carolina for 3 days to the Teach Me to Trade seminar. And then I was so fascinated with it and really just thought I was going to be this most wonderful trader and just understand everything that I was seeing on the screen and, the ticker. I'm like reading all that and not understanding, but I just felt so empowered when I went to that. Well, at the end of the seminar, they were like, okay, now we have a school that you have to go to. I think it was like 2 weeks and it was $10,000. And I was a little, elementary school teacher. I was like, oh, well, I guess the buck stops here. So I had all these goals about how I was going to be a trader. That's why I'm so interested in listening to you talk about this. And then, and now I'm actually in a course. I follow this lady named Terry Ijeoma, who has a course called Trade and Travel, where she teaches people how to trade. And so I'm fascinated by that. And then you talked about Duolingo. If I could tell you how many times my daughter's like, I have to do my Duolingo before I go to bed. She and her cousin are learning different languages and they have to do it before they go to bed. So I'm familiar with that as well. And so this hybrid situation with your courses, when you say hybrid for the PhD, are you saying that some of the classes were like live and then the other part of it was asynchronous?
So yeah, we would fly out there every other month.
And it's in person. Okay.
Yeah, in person for 4 days, like 12-hour days for 4 days straight.
Every other month?
On average, about every other month. And then the time in between, you're doing all these Zoom classes with your professors or your team or whatever project you've got going on. So even though it's considered a part-time program, when I got in there, I'm like, part-time my butt. Sorry.
Right.
You are putting in a lot of hours. And what was frustrating is I remember when I got my MBA, the professors were very clear. So my MBA was an executive MBA. And it was every Saturday for 8 hours for 2 years. No breaking from that. And they said, for every hour you're in class, double it for your homework. I'm like, okay, that means 2 hours every evening, Monday through Friday, 5 hours on Sunday. I can manage that. But with here, it just depended on the professor and the semester. And just so sometimes it was challenging to get a hold of it. But at the very beginning, if I made that my focus, like, okay, based on this and the project, this is how much time I need to allocate outside of the classroom and outside of the Zoom. So that's what I meant by hybrid.
So Thomasina, this intrigues me. I've never heard of this before. So the 4 days every other month, were they like the weekend, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Or, okay, I was wondering how people take off work for 4 days, every other.
Yeah, Thursday through Sunday.
Okay. All right. So then let's give a rating on your experience. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being outstanding and 1 being horrific, what rating would you give to your online experience? Let's look at that PhD program. What rating would you give to that experience and why?
I would give it an 8. And, I've been thinking like between 7 and 8, but when I think of 7, I think of C, average. When I think of 8, I think of B, very good. So my experience has been very good. But there have been those challenges where, it's been frustrating to me. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when I started the PhD, it had been years before I had to depend on technology a lot, which was at my job at FedEx. So, okay, I'm having to put presentations together again. Okay, that's no problem. But guess what? Everybody's not just using PowerPoint. They're using Canvas. They're using all these other things. And that was kind of overwhelming to me at times. but I was determined to learn as much as I can. So when there was a technology I would learn and I couldn't master it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to put you on this piece of paper. And the goal is when I graduate, go back and try and learn these technologies. I also had peers who were very good about being gracious with me and being helpful. So I always appreciated that because I tried to not get frustrated. And I think they could see that I was genuine. I'm trying really hard to learn. And so they would be very forgiving on those times that I wasn't maybe up to par with them.
Well, I think a B is a really good score. And also the fact that you have such, sounds like, high autonomy where you really do what it takes to try to learn on your own. Because there are so many different technologies. And that would be something like when I taught my courses, I would try to interject different types of technology, maybe one per course.
Mm-hmm.
And students would be like, oh, I didn't even know this existed. And so I really enjoyed, searching it out because it's like, new cell phones. Something comes out every 5 minutes. So you'll find, yeah, and now that this AI, I can only imagine, is out here. There's so many more websites and platforms and things that you can use to enhance your learning and make things easier for you for the most part.
Yes.
So I think an 8 is a really good score. Now, Thomasina, if you were approached by a 25-year-old who had just completed their master's degree, you spoke about your MBA, executive MBA, and they're considering pursuing a doctorate online, what advice would you give to them? Do you have any wise counsel to share?
I would hope so. I would say several things. I would say the first thing I would ask them is, why do you want this particular degree? And make sure that the reasons why they want it is not just ego-driven. Because one of the things that I would summarize about the PhD, it's kind of like the intensity of the master's with the length of a bachelor's. So most bachelors are 4 years, and masters are a lot more intense than perhaps, say, your undergraduate. And you have to really want it and want to continue aspects of it after you graduate. So, I mean, half of my reason for going into it was personal. So I don't think there's anything wrong with a PhD being a personal goal, but it needs to be more than just a personal goal. And then in terms of online, I love online, but there's a lot to be said for face-to-face and building those relationships with your cohort. I had the best cohort. And we would compare our cohort to the other cohorts in the classes above and below us, and even taking the degree at the same time. And even our professors would say, oh, this is a wonderful cohort. And we're like, we know, we're the best. So, I now have long-term, connections and friendships that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten just online. That's not to say you can't have that online, but I think you have to work extra hard. And one of the beauties about getting an advanced degree is, and why these universities charge so much, it's not so much what you're learning, because a lot of what you learn is not as useful 10 years out. It's the connections that you make. So any degree that you pursue, the connections can be just as important as the knowledge that you learn. So I would have that person keep all of that in mind and then decide, after you do some soul searching, then decide, okay, is this for me?
Thomasina, that was so good. You said the intensity of a doctorate is the intensity of the master's and the length of a bachelor's.
Yep.
That is such a wonderful way to explain it. I never thought about that. And then you also said it's not so much what you're learning, but the connections that you make.
Yes.
So that's some really profound things to think about. And that the ego-driven thing is something also that I was talking about to my former student too. Don't just do this because you want doctor in front of your name.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, and then that's why we have a lot of ABD.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's great that you were able to make those connections. So would you advise that person to research whether or not their program had the opportunity for those types of interactions before they decide?
Yes. In fact, So one of the things I'm grateful for is I just joined a group on WhatsApp, and they're also PhD students. In fact, that's how I learned about you. And, we get to compare notes based on what their university shares and does for them as students. And they do a good job. And I've only been with them a short period of time, so I'm sure I'll learn more. But it also makes me grateful that Pepperdine really does make an emphasis on making sure that their students get the most out of their experience, out of their classes, and that they stay on track. They have several little mini programs that ensure that they stay on track to graduate. So we have something called dissertation boot camp, and I think that lasts for like 2 months. Every Tuesday, it's a Zoom call, to encourage each other and to carve out that time to write. The dissertation period, we have a lot of term agreements we make with our chairperson to make sure we stay on track. We're not left out there in the wilderness. So it makes me grateful that Pepperdine really cares that we get the most out of this degree and that we stay on track.
That is wonderful, because the wilderness is exactly how I would describe my experience and the experiences of others that I have taught to at other universities. So I think that is impactful for them to really think about not just the content and the academics of it all, but helping you and supporting you to get through the program. More programs need to do that. So
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about your needs, Thomasina. When you are taking an online course, what do you require or desire from your professor or the course in general to be successful?
Okay. So I'm the kind of person that gets distracted very easily. So if we're on a Zoom call, I really need it to be one speaker at a time. And if you allow people to constantly, it's okay periodically, but constantly overtalk, interject, it gets to be a bit of a mess for me. But what I tend to do is then I tune out. And as much as I catch myself doing that, because I'm the one who hurts, if I tune out, I'm the one not listening and learning. But I also know how I am. So I need a little bit of order. That's just me. I mean, back in the day when I was a kid, ADHD was not a thing. There was no testing for it. Whereas now you can test kids. So I wouldn't be surprised if I had a little bit of ADHD. I've just learned to know what my needs are and try and make sure that they're fulfilled. So I appreciate a facilitator, a professor who's leading the online discussion, whether it be Zoom or something else, to make sure that there's some semblance of order. It doesn't have to be like robotic, but just some semblance of order. So one speaker at a time. And, a lot of these programs like Zoom, they have those emojis that allow you to press the raise your hand, so that there can be some order. So I appreciate that. And this is just something for myself. I need to make sure I have everything within arm's reach, to make sure I have my water, my Kleenex, a cough drop. If I think that particular book or paper is going to be discussed, have it handy so I can grab it. My paper, my notes, whatever it is that I need. So I know I need everything nearby so that I'm fully prepared. So those are my things that I know I need to be successful in any kind of online teaching.
Thomasina, you made me think about when I would be setting up courses in Blackboard. Do you all what learning management system do you use at Pepperdine?
Sakai?
Okay. Well, in Blackboard, you could set up whether there would be, one person on the mic at a time or how many people could talk on the mic at a time. And I always would put it on one at a time. And sometimes my students, I would have, the breakout groups, and sometimes they would be like, some of them didn't like that because, some people want to overtalk other people. So they would be so disturbed that they couldn't talk on top of each other. So they would say, can you please release it so that 2 or 3 people can talk? And there are times where, somebody's muted and they don't know it, and you can't really tell them if they're not looking at the chat because you have it set so that only one person can talk. What I'm trying to say is not they're muted, but they haven't come off of their mic so that somebody else can talk. So it does create challenges, but I feel like it benefits more than anything to have one mic at a time so that you don't have all those people joining in at once. It creates an issue with the sound. And like you said, people get turned off and distracted. So that's a really good point that no one has ever shared on this series. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So now let's talk about your pet peeves. Now, a pet peeve is a minor annoyance. It may not be that minor to you, but it's a minor annoyance that an individual finds particularly irritating. And it's something that bothers you more than it bothers others. So when you're taking online courses, what are some pet peeves that you may have, Thomasina?
Okay. And I try to also remind myself that this is me, and a lot of it has to do with my FedEx days. But what's important to people at FedEx? Being on time. So, I try to be on time, and I need other people to be on time, because if we're all trickling in late, then the meeting doesn't really get started until after the start time. And, some people don't have the luxury of, oh, I can continue to go on after the time we said we would end the Zoom call. So I try to be very much on time, stick to the agenda and so forth, but I also try to be flexible. My time in Miami. So within my 20 years at FedEx, I did work in Miami for 6 years. And, Miami is kind of a hodgepodge of everything Central and South America. And, you have a lot of different cultures and so forth. And you realize that, not everything goes the way you want it to go. So you really do have to become a flexible person. And, there are times to be flexible. And then also sometimes people are late because they couldn't help it. But you want to build that kind of reputation where you're not always known for being late. You're on time. So that's definitely one of my pet peeves. And again, something I mentioned earlier, people speaking over people or hogging up all the time to speak. Everyone needs to be heard. Everyone needs to share the time and speak what they want to speak. So those are two things that, I dislike it when someone consistently breaks those two kind of rules.
Do you find that not teaching, but being in those virtual synchronous types of classrooms online, does it make some people withdraw, or do they feel more open to talk since they're not face-to-face? What do you think?
Yes. And I'll give you some examples. So with my cohort, we've gotten to know each other so well that we're comfortable with opening up, even though we're not face-to-face. I mean, obviously, when you're face-to-face, you're even more comfortable. But because we grew to know each other so well that even on a Zoom call, we might feel comfortable enough to share a personal experience that we think the others could learn from. But I've also had experiences where I've taught workshops online. And so this is a transactional relationship. This is the first time meeting each other, and most likely we're not going to see each other again. So I find people don't open up as much during those kind of examples as opposed to with a group that you see on Zoom again and again and again. Now, if you're together on Zoom, maybe just for one semester, it just depends on what the chemistry is like with that particular group. But for my cohort, because we've known each other so well, I found that we were generally pretty open. But if it's like a one-time workshop, I think as the facilitator, you really have to, one, you shouldn't be recording, because if you want to talk about something more intimate, but two, the facilitator needs to do a better job of really trying to draw out those experiences from the participants and making sure that they feel comfortable.
So how long did it take you to feel as comfortable as you do with your cohort? Would you say it was a semester, or how long did it take?
Probably about a year.
Oh, okay.
But that's also me. So
yeah. Right. Okay, well, Thomasina, guess what? We have made it to the very end, the Dear Professor segment. And this is where you get the opportunity to share your heart with a fellow professor that you have in mind. Now, I want you to imagine that there's an online bulletin board with virtual sticky notes or messages from students to their former professors. What's the note that you would leave one of your online college professors?
Dear Professor, I learned so much from you throughout my PhD journey, and I hope to stay in touch and continue to learn from you. Please remember, not all of us are as tech savvy as you, nor do we learn as quickly when it comes to technology, but we're trying our best and are determined to push through. Thank you for your patience and positivity. We really need it during the most challenging projects, and we appreciate it more than you'll ever know.
Oh, Thomasina, that was so good and so to the point. Do you find that you have relationships with professors after the class ends?
You know what's interesting is I did not in my undergraduate and not so much in my MBA. But what I learned from not doing that is how much I kind of suffered from that. So with my PhD, I've made it a point of trying to stay in touch with my professors, trying to go back and tap into their knowledge. If I find an article that I think is of interest to them, sending it to them, trying to do what I can to maintain some kind of a relationship. And it may never turn into a friendship or a professional relationship, but, letting them know that I'm not going to reach out to you in 5 years just because I need something from you. No one wants that kind of a relationship. But I have so thoroughly enjoyed learning from every single one of my professors. And I hope that they realize that I do think of them and I try to share with them things that I think they will benefit from. And I've also let them know that if you think there's ever anything that I can help you with, don't hesitate. In fact, one of my quant professors talked about a student who was doing his dissertation on supply chain management. So when there was a break, I went up to him and I said, look, I came from FedEx 20 years. I guarantee I'm 3 degrees away from somebody who knows something that student might need. So don't hesitate to have them reach out to me or you reach out to me. And he was kind of surprised, like, oh, you would do that? I'm like, absolutely. So, I think it's important to keep relationships with your professors, especially if they're in the same subject that's of interest to you. But, they're pretty smart and they're pretty connected, and you never know down the road how you can benefit their studies or they can help you benefit your studies.
Oh, that was another great tip because I think sometimes, especially if they're doing an online degree, people can feel isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And, the communication just goes, between emails or messages on the LMS, but they never really get to know each other,
Right.
the student to the professor and likewise, or even the learning community in general, especially if they're just doing, discussion board type of courses. And so I think you gave a really good point with that, how important it is to develop relationships with your professors. In fact, when I was in my doctoral program, a couple of my professors had been students of other professors at that university at different universities. It was so interesting. Mm-hmm. And they talked about that at our residency, that you were my professor when I was getting my doctorate at such and such school, and now we're working here together. So you just never know how you might, how what past life takes you on. And so just developing those relationships and creating that network is really important. So, Thomasina, as we walk away from each other in this virtual environment, I want to share my takeaways from today's conversation. And so basically what I got from you is that you need a facilitator who has some semblance of order in the virtual classroom, particularly only allowing one speaker at a time so that you are not easily distracted by confusion and chaos.
Right.
Now, I'm paraphrasing, but you didn't actually say that, but that's what I got from what you said. And you also like to have your resources, the textbook or water or whatever tools that you need right there handy. Mm-hmm. In that environment so that you can learn to the best of your ability. Does that sound accurate, or did I leave out anything?
Nope, that sounds accurate.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you for spending time with me today, Thomasina. I know if you're in a doctoral program, you have plenty to do and you work. So I appreciate you doing this and spending time with us and sharing your experiences here. And I wish you the best as you embark on your dissertation journey. I want you to remember that passion that you have, and don't become discouraged, to know that people before you have accomplished this, and you will too.
Thanks.
So please keep me posted on when you graduate. Is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. And if you have any questions on trading or anything else, don't hesitate to reach back out to me.
Oh, definitely. Did I tell you I was in a course right now?
I know
I don't
you
think I said that.
of course, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy to help out any way I can.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much. Listeners, thank you for listening and joining us today. I'm only going to ask you to do one thing this week, and that is to share this series with 3 people that may be interested in conversations with students on various levels discussing their experiences online. I look forward to spending time with you next week on the Dear Professor series, where college students who take courses online speak their minds. Bye-bye.